Alright guys, Joshua chapter 3, 4, and 5 today. Basically, what ends up happening in the first couple chapters here is that Joshua, or the spies return to Joshua and they give him a report, and they go through here and basically they put the people together and they're getting ready to go to go over the river Jordan and to go into Jericho. And basically they're going to be taking Jericho here probably in the next couple chapters, but you can read through those chapters and kind of see what's going on. There's a couple things that stood out, like in chapter 4, one of the things that they did was as they took the ark across, the river Jordan actually splits in the same fashion that it did when the Red Sea had parted under Moses. But it's the ark, which kind of symbolizes the presence of the Lord amongst the people. It was the ark that actually split the water and made it stand up on end and allowed the people to cross the river on dry land. And one of the things that Joshua tells them is, for each one of for one person out of each one of the tribes to grab a stone out of the river bottom, and whenever they set camp, which they set camp in Gilgal, which is on the border of Jericho, whenever they set camp, they're going to take these 12 stones and they're going to pile them up, and basically this is going to kind of be a memorial for future generations to just remind them what it is that God did, how he parted the sea again, how the ark is the presence of the Lord, and things like that. And we've talked about this kind of in previous chapters and discussions, how that is something that we can always fall back on, is if we keep a log, if we keep a remembrance of the things that God has done in our life, we're less likely to slip and fall away, and we're more likely to kind of stay on that path and to keep looking to him. But as we get to chapter 5, basically what happens is they're over the river Jordan, and they're not quite in the land where they're getting ready to start going to battle with these nations to take this land. But Joshua, or the Lord appears to Joshua and tells him, hey, these people, still haven't been circumcised. And he goes on in verse 5, it says, now all the people that came out were circumcised, talking about all the people that came out of Egypt were circumcised. But all the people that were born in the wilderness by the way, as they came forth out of Egypt, them they had not circumcised. So basically, as Moses brought the Israelites out of Egypt and they wandered around the wilderness, all the people who had come out had been circumcised the way that they had done under Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and so forth. But then once they started having kids in the wilderness for that 40 years, they didn't circumcise them. Now, not exactly sure why they didn't, other than just purely for the fact that they were a mobile, nomadic type people who were traveling from point A to point B and stuff, and obviously that's not something that you want to have to contend with when you're walking around. But the healing process. But I'm sure there were periods of time where they sat and rested as well. So I'm not exactly sure why they didn't do it, but I also notice here that God didn't really make a big deal out of this until they get ready to come in and take this land, and God tells them, hey, you need to be circumcised. And we've talked about this before when you get to Colossians, how that the circumcision is a circumcision of the heart. It even says that back in Deuteronomy. So this was a symbolic thing, the circumcision. It wasn't really anything else. But one of the things that I really kind of jumped out at me was the fact that regardless of how long these people had been walking with the Lord, regardless of all of that, it was never too late for them to fall back on God's commands. It was never too late. They were told to circumcise their kids for generations, and here it is, this generation didn't. And it wasn't too late for them to rectify that. So something that kind of just stands out to me, and maybe a real life application, is that even in those instances where we get off track, where we fall away, where we're not being obedient, it's never too late to get back into God's will, to fall back into obedience to Him. So basically what ends up happening here is they circumcise the people, and they allow the people time to heal, and then they get ready to go into Jericho. And the end of the chapter, we see here that Joshua actually meets the Lord of hosts, appears before him, and he falls down on his knees and begins to worship him. And the captain of the Lord of hosts, says unto him to take your shoes off, for you're on holy ground. And this is basically the same exact thing that the Lord had said whenever he appeared to Moses with the burning bush. So kind of interesting that same circumstance is happening to Joshua as well, kind of maybe indoctrinating him or beginning that relationship, that one-on-one personal relationship with the Lord that way. So anyway, just wanted to point that out to you guys. So God bless.